Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Line Change, the NHL betting podcast from the Action Network. My name is Michael Leboff, and joining me are my friends and co-hosts Nick Martin and Tim Kalinowski. Together, the three of us will break down Wednesday's three-game slate in the National Hockey League, and we will start with Nick's favorite team against his other favorite team, the Washington Capitals and the Toronto Maple Leafs, going at it in DC. Um, Second night of a back-to-back for Toronto. Ilya Samsonov will start on Tuesday night, so Joseph Woll will be in net for the Leafs on Wednesday night. The Caps are playing a brutal kind of schedule here. They're 3-4 and coming back across the continent after playing a really good game in Calgary that Nick was in attendance for on Monday night. Caps plus 120, Leafs minus 142. This total sitting at 6.5 with juice on the under. I think we're aligned here, but Nick, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so I'll just start and say, I mean, the number one thing that I'm kind of thinking right now that the average person is undervaluing a little bit, especially because it feels like now the Capitals are actually getting talked about, given that they've finally actually somehow crawled into a playoff spot, is you're seeing that minus 30 goal differential stat everywhere. And I agree that the Caps aren't as good as their record at all. But with that said, they have improved pretty considerably since the All-Star break, and they have had a lot of different pieces coming in and out of the lineup. Since that point, they actually have a positive goal differential. So I think they're somewhat of a fraud, but I don't think they're like the level of fraud that people think they are. And if you look at the actual like run of play numbers since the All-Star break, they're about break even. So if
I don't
you're
think
talking
they're a
about a
fraud.
team,
They're kind of where they're supposed to be in the standings.
I
Like they're
yeah,
we're
that's
not.
true.
This is like I
They're in
think
the
people
fraud club.
assign playoff status as a like this big deal, but when you're the eighth seed as they are right now, it means you're bang mediocre in a conference, right? So I actually think that calling them a fraud is a little unfair, Nick. I think that they
I
are
agree.
right in the
And
middle
my
there.
Yeah, and my point is just that I think they're playing. I don't love the spot. It obviously helps that they're catching Toronto just on a direct back to back. That helps kind of balance out the spot in terms of how bad it is for them on travel. And then the one point that we had made on Andy's show, Mike, and ahead of the Canucks game, and I think it was really true ahead of the Flames game last night too, where I completely thought that game should have just been a pick 'em, is that the Capitals are getting undervalued because I think there's weight on the bodies that came out of the lineup. And Mantha had been great. I get that. But Edmondson had been terrible. And, you look at Kuznetsov gone now, same situation. I think what's happening is like people are looking at these Hershey Bears guys like no names, and that's probably fair. But when you actually like think about it and you look at the way they're playing, it's better than the way that the pieces that were there were playing outside of Mantha. So I can see like I think there is some argument as to why like it's been so hard for the market to accept that the Caps are actually playing a little bit better. So it's not like I'm trying to say they're the best bet ever here, but I think with the Leafs back to back with Marner and Youngkrok out, it's closer to even. I think it's a fun bet on this kind of slate, and yeah, to me it just looks a little bit too long.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm most concerned about what type of weight to put on the spot. That's kind of how I like to start my handicapping, but before the lines come out, I just write down every spot a team's in. It just helps me get kind of in the right mindset of where teams are in their schedule and what they have on the horizon and whatnot. And so I, I I'm just really, without having seen this Toronto Philly game yet, I initially saw this price and I was like, this seems cheap on Toronto, right? The cap I was buying into the Caps are cute, but they're not that good. And they're playing like, we talk about, oh, they're in a playoff spot, but they're playing like hopscotch with the playoff spot. The one night they're in, one night they're out. It's like by the hour. So I think initially I liked Toronto here and was wondering. I almost felt like there wasn't enough. You know, I feel like there wasn't enough Toronto like back to back or too much rather baked in here. I think I'm trying to bet Toronto cheap, and Nicky didn't make it too easy for me with that argument.
Well, and the other important note too, like I already bet just because first off, I don't want to root for the Leafs here and whatever, but I do think, and the other part of that was just because I don't know if better than plus 125 is going to exist tomorrow. But with that said, this will drop after all that movement anyways. So I would say keep in mind that you really want to get Lindgren. I think if you're betting the Caps at this point, Kemper's he's got an 890 save percentage. That's another thing all the Caps fans are pointing out is that half that goal differential is just coming in games where Kemper's just gotten destroyed, which doesn't happen with Lindgren in goal. So I would keep in mind that you would need a better number if it's going to be Kemper Wednesday. I'd think the logic is to just ride the hot hand with Lindgren. It doesn't really seem like the time to try to play around and get Kemper going or anything like that. But it's definitely not a lock which Caps goalie will play in this one at the time of recording.
Yeah. And to go back to that goal differential thing that keeps getting brought up, that the Caps started horrifically, if you remember those first 5 games, and people are like, "Wow, man, this team, they could be maybe fighting for the wooden spoon in the NHL." So I think after like 10 games, their goal difference was already sitting at -12. So it's it's not like it's they've just been they've had peaks and valleys like any team, but right now they seem to be on the upswing. I'm with you. I think Washington at one plus 120 or better is good. I mean, honestly, like I think that they're just going to be a more appealing bet, even because I think this game comes down to a coin flip with the bodies out for Toronto, the travel involved for them on the back to back, the goaltending is I'd give a not a significant edge, but I'd give a clear edge to Lindgren over Joseph Woll, just considering the form of the two of them, and Woll battling back from an injury. So I think that there's a lot here. Oh, and also like we will probably mention this in every Leafs game from now until the end of the season. They are playing a dead rubber last 15 games. Like everybody knows where they're going to end up. They're going to be the 3rd seed in the Atlantic Division. This is nothing new to them. Like this is if there's a team that knows how to play out the string into the playoffs, it's the Maple Leafs, because they've been going through this seemingly 5-6 seasons in a row now, outside of that North Division. But so there's that. The Leafs have been good on the road this season. I guess you can consider that, but I do think that Washington is the right side here in this matchup, and I think that they in a weird way they're getting a lot of credit, but I think they deserve a different kind of credit than they're getting. It's not like this plucky upstart team. They're just they're playing the exact way that they need to play to collect points, which is the business they're in right now. Coyotes and Stars up next. Coyotes obviously sitting as a pretty significant underdog at plus 225 in Dallas. Stars minus 278. Neither one of these teams is playing on the loaded slate on Tuesday night, so don't have to worry about that. And the total is sitting at 6.5 right now. Dallas, we are recording this obviously before the games on Tuesday, so this will change. But right now in a 3-way tie with Colorado and Winnipeg, Dallas has played 2 more games than Winnipeg and 1 more game than Colorado. The Yotes, though, they're starting to do what they were doing in the beginning of the year. They're getting some wins. They're pulling some upsets. They're beating teams in big spots. I don't want to lay it with Dallas. I think that it's been a long time since I bet the Coyotes as a big underdog like this, and I think I'm actually going to do it here. The more I think about it, the more I actually think this price looks a little bit out of whack, and who knows where it'll go. Considering that the Stars have been kind of just uneven over the last little while. They're not playing like a team that you'd want to bet at minus 275 over their last 10 games, especially with the goaltending. Anything here, Nick?
Yeah, I liked the Stars at the best available numbers on Tuesday. They were minus 250. I actually thought I think they deserve to be a slightly bigger favorite right now. I get that the way the goaltending is going, but the Coyotes are a little dinged up, and I think that's like a minor concern for me. And the other target that I think I'll put out there that's probably going to be a lot more attainable tomorrow morning, I think that over 3.5 goals for the Stars at better than minus 145 would be a good play that I'm pretty high on. And then the other play that I'm going to be keeping my eye on is if Matt Duchene sits, I want to try to target Wyatt Johnson props. I think he'd probably be the most likely guy to go back up onto the top power play. Granted, they might want to stick with a left-handed shot in Jamie Benn in that role, but we'll see. I think that's something to watch at the morning skate in a spot where I like Dallas to go above their team total fairly often. So those are kind of my leans there. I think you could probably find some value with Johnson. I know people will probably be or looking to back Stankoven in some prop markets as well, and I definitely wouldn't be talking anyone out of that.
Yeah, my concern is Ottinger. I mean, I just don't want to. I'm not looking to feel sharp by laying a big number here, and with the concern of Ottinger, I'd rather wait and see. Like, it feels like to me personally, it takes it's almost like taking more guts to pass here than it is to like find a play on it, because I am tempted into Dallas. I saw you track Dallas, Nick, and I just Andre has to have everyone concerned right now, because this Dallas team, I would tell you right now, in terms of roster outs, I think it's like them in Florida. I really think they're very comparable to Florida in their makeup. So, but that the goalie question mark is just so concerning for me.
It's a huge question
Yep.
mark.
Yeah.
I don't mind this spot for him coming off like the rest, and it feels like one of these ones where I could see him getting right. I still just have such a hard time imagining that he's this bad. Although
I
he wasn't
agree.
great last playoffs either. So
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely an interesting.
You see this happen a lot with goalies. I feel like they have that one crazy playoff run, and no matter how far away we get from it, they just get credit for it forever. And because Anja really did set the world on fire. Yeah, last year. This is like a obviously a
Well,
meaningful sample. Last season he was
last
good.
regular season
Yeah,
he was pretty dominant.
yeah, and then the playoffs he was in. But it is what it is with goalies. Who knows? Um, Wild and Kings are next. The Wild traveling at plus 130. The Kings minus 150. This total sitting at 6. Minnesota will be in Anaheim on Tuesday night, so they are on the second night of a back-to-back. The Kings are home for both ends of their back-to-back. They play the Blackhawks on Tuesday night, so both teams are prohibitive favorites on the front end. Yeah, I think if I were to rank the games 1, 2, and 3 in terms of betting appeal, I would go Capitals as my like number one bet in the confidence pool, followed by the Coyotes, and then by the Kings if I had to pick. So I think if you want to bet Los Angeles here, you're probably in the right zone. It doesn't look too bad, but I think the Wild are still a little plucky. I can't find myself trusting this Kings goaltending as a favorite, which is not great, but Minnesota's just so banged up, Nick.
Yeah, I'm close with the Kings as well at minus 156. I think it's a pretty reasonable look. I kind of have them a little closer to minus 170 here. I do want to see how the games go tonight. It shouldn't feel that meaningful to me, but I just feel like the Wild are so close to being like entirely written off, and I continue to want to see how things are going to go with Eck out of the lineup. He's been such a major piece. And they are going with Fleury here. Fleury was just named the third star of the week. So he's kind of proven me wrong because he keeps being the better Wild goaltender, but I don't see it. Like I still think he just looks too active in his net. He looks small relative to most goalies nowadays. He's still giving up more goals than expected over the entirety of the season. So I don't hate just fading him as well. Although David Rittich at the other end of things, I do think that the over 5.5 at minus 134 is also another look. Maybe another one of these ones in the category of like, are we like pumping it up on like a full 13 game slate? Maybe not, but I think if you want some action, 5.5 is pretty low for a game where like both goaltenders really don't look overly good. I know neither of these teams have shown a lot of offensive upside, but I think we've probably seen kind of the worst of it for the Kings on that front. So I don't know. We talked about how hard it is to catch an under on a 5.5. I feel like I'm not convinced that that one deserves to be there.
I mean, how do you handicap, as we sit here on Tuesday late afternoon, the fact that the Wild's first half of their back to back is Anaheim and LA's first half of their back to back is Chicago. As we sit here, it's like, I don't know how much stock to put into either of those. And the Wild are already in Southern California, like LA's at home. So it's probably what net a wash, you would have to say, right? I mean,
I agree, yeah. And
yeah.
it shouldn't mean that much to me that like I feel like I almost have a little more confidence in the Wild. Like obviously if you just see them play good one night, that helps things. But I would feel a little better if they like did come through and get the points tonight in Anaheim too. Just on the like just kind of a feel thing for me. It seems like that would give me a little more like faith that they'll hang around and kind of compete at the highest level in this back-to-back. Whereas like it feels like their season's just right on the cusp of being completely lost. And then I think sometimes there is a bit of a drop off from teams like right around that moment where they're kind of just they've been fully written out of the game.
Yeah, I mean, all that said, I came here with a strong lean on LA at minus 155, and like I think I might get there enough to play it. I mean, it's difficult for for the listener here. It's just such a brutal slate. These are kind of
It
games that
is.
they have a number of reasons of why you'd be totally happy to pass on, and that's like what makes it so
But
hard.
I mean, we led with the good dog. I think the Caps are very live at plus 120, plus 125. So what can you do? It's 3 games. Not going to have that many picks.
Yeah, and we'll be right back at it on Thursday for another heavy slate. I think there's 11 games, so not quite as busy as Tuesday. But yeah, this is how the NHL schedule works. I will say, like you said, Nick, that the Caps, I think, are that Caps bet is in its own little, like it's the one bet I think I'd be making on a deeper slate of the bunch. The other two are just products of their environment. Um,
Yeah,
and
and the
that'll do.
last oh, sorry, I was just gonna say the last note I'll throw out there too is like I've been trying to give out props online change because I know I always give out so many in the apps and like in articles, right? And I could just start to do pure targets, but it's like you're not just gonna go through targets of every single player. And then the lines are moving so much more for player props than they ever have before. Like it's crazy. You really just can't account for it enough. And like it felt like last year there was a lot more underrating from odds makers based off like what kind of a matchup a player is in. So that's kind of the one thing there. Because I always think of these short slates like, let's really try to dive into those and give out like good targets. But yeah, I guess basically just for this one, it's tough. But yeah, I think that Wyatt Johnson one's the one to watch.
Okay. That'll do it for this abbreviated episode. Good luck to everybody on Wednesday. If you're following or fading, please rate, review, and subscribe if you can, if you haven't already. Thank you to our producer, Noah, and thank you to Nick and Tim as well. We will see you again on Thursday.